Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Jun-sok, professor of economics at the Catholic University of Korea. Dr. Young, thank you as always for coming on.
You're welcome.
So President Trump gave a speech in New York Tuesday in which he said the U.S. is in an economic boom. He said he's close to a deal with China, but he also renewed his threat of tariffs. It's likely that would have had some impact on the markets. What's the story today?
Okay, well, he did speak at the Economic Club in New York, and as you mentioned, he pointed out that U.S. economy is doing well, perhaps though not as well as he mentioned in the speech, but still, U.S. economy is doing well. He took responsibility for a lot of the economic boom, but played down some of the problems, and he also complained about the Fed keeping the interest rates too high and the unfair trade with China and EU. He didn't really give that many signals about U.S.-China trade war, but he did say that if Beijing does not make a deal, he will raise tariffs. And while he did not say so explicitly, it did seem like he is willing to go ahead with the tariff increase on December 15th if they did not have a deal. Also, a couple of other interesting factors is that he started to point out problems with the European Union in terms of tariffs. He said that the EU was worse than China. And it should be noted that EU and U.S. is also going under some trade war at the moment, dealing with aircraft subsidies and steel and aluminum. Now, as to how this could affect, how this affected the stock markets, in the U.S. stock markets closed before President Trump's speech, so it didn't really affect the U.S. markets all that much. The Dow was unchanged from the previous day. It ended at the same level, which is very unusual. S&P rose by 0.16%. Nasdaq rose by 0.26%. So I don't think the news about the possibility of tariffs increasing on China was really calculated into the market. But the Asian market, the trading ended down than it was before yesterday. Hong Kong fell by 1.76%, but that has as much to do with their problems they're having, the demonstrations, and with economics. Shanghai index went down by 0.15%, Nikkei went down by 0.93%, and the Korean indices, Kospi went down by 0.86%, Kosdaq went down by 0.50%. European markets, when it starts, it's likely to be down as well, and the American markets, well, it may not go down much, but I expect it to be affected negatively by this news.
Well, you mentioned Europe, and reports say the Trump administration's likely to push back its tariffs on cars from Europe by another 6 months. At the same time, it's looking like the U.S. won't put more tariffs on Korea. So what's the thinking in Washington and in the Korean car industry?
Okay, well, while some U.S. officials from the Trump administration did say that the tariff decision will be delayed for another 6 months, that wasn't. President Trump did not mention anything like that personally, including when he was at the Economics Club when making his speech. Now, if you look at President Trump, whenever he thinks that the China trade dispute with China is slowing down, he starts mentioning European Union. This happened during the beginning of his administration when he started attacking European Union until he started attacking China. Then European Union took a back seat. Then in May, when they thought that they almost had a deal with China, he started mentioning European Union again. And then around October, early November, when the first stage agreement seemed to be almost fixed, he started mentioning European Union again, but now he's signaling that perhaps the deal with China would last beyond November, perhaps December, even next January. So that may be one of the reasons why he's thinking about delaying the decision on automobile tariffs on European Union. But again, with President Trump, you're never quite sure what he's going to do. Now, as for Korea, There has been signals that Korea will be exempted from the increase in automobile tariffs, but there also has been some reports that the United States has been using it as a veiled threat during economic trade negotiations or even diplomatic negotiations. So we'll basically have to wait and see. But for now, I think President Trump is fairly happy with where he is in regards to Korea.
Right. Well, staying here in Korea, we have an estimate from the Korea Development Institute saying economic growth next year is going to be 2.3% and this year 2% flat. Now, that's, of course, taking into account things like these trade conflicts. What can Korea do about this relatively weak growth?
Okay, well, I think one of the KDI's more optimistic conclusions is that we will make 2.0%, and that's in line with government's position that government will not let the growth rate fall below 2.0%. I personally have some doubts on whether that's possible, but I think KDI is taking the optimistic point of view. But it does recommend that Korea government maintains expansionary fiscal policy and BOK become much more active in expansionary monetary policy. KDI had mentioned in the past that if Korea engages in too much expansionary fiscal policy, there will be problems with government debt in the future. But I think they decided that this is the lesser of two evils because the situation is so bad. Even with increased debt, Korea should undergo expansionary fiscal policy. But they also recommend that Korea makes long-term plans on how to control the rise in debt. And I think that's actually good advice.
All right, Dr. Young, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your insights. We appreciate it, as always.
Thank you.